early 1917, it saw a chance to win the war by starving Britain, its strongest opponent. Britain tried different things to stop the submarine attacks. There was talk of training seagulls and sea lions to spot the subs and of having swimmers smash U-boats' periscopes with hammers. The British started having their supply ships stick close together and sail in convoys, guarded by armed vessels. The Royal Navy began using depth charges, 300-pound underwater weapons that would explode when they sank to certain levels to damage or destroy U-boats. And a Royal Navy Volunteer Reserve Lieutenant Commander named Norman Wilkinson had another suggestion. It was unlikely. It was improbable. It may have even seemed bonkers. His idea was to camouflage the ships. Wilkinson's responsibilities included patrolling the waters off southwest England and sweeping for mines. He saw a lot of ships as part of his job. One Monday morning, after a weekend away spent fishing, he was headed back to work when inspiration struck. I suddenly got the idea that since it was impossible to paint a ship so that she could not be seen by a submarine, the extreme opposite was the answer: to paint her. Not for low visibility, but in such a way as to break up her form, and thus confuse a submarine officer as to the course on which she was heading. The word camouflage itself was brand new at the time, but the concept of camouflage, of fooling an enemy into seeing something other than what's actually there, was an old one. And Wilkinson wasn't the first person ever to suggest camouflage for ships. Imaginative folks in the fields of art and science had tried before. Wilkinson, however, got his idea at just the right time. The British government was desperate to stop the U-boat attacks. It listened to Wilkinson's plan, named his approach Dazzle, and said, more or less, give it a try. So he did. In spring 1917, he had a ship Dazzle painted, with a crazy-looking pattern on one side and a crazy-looking pattern on the other side. These patterns were supposed to confuse German submarine crews about the ship's direction and speed. Dazzle was meant to make the Germans think a ship was, for example, turning toward the west, when it was actually headed to the southeast. U-boats didn't carry many torpedoes. If Dazzle could cause a German sub to waste a torpedo by firing it to a spot where a British ship wasn't actually going to be, and if this happened over and over, then more British ships would stay afloat and get their cargo to its destination. The Royal Navy liked Wilkinson's first ship, so it asked for 50 more done up in Dazzle. And it liked those next 50 so much that it asked him to paint every stuff-carrying ship that Britain had with those crazy combinations of black, white, gray, green, blue, purple, and pink. Of course, Wilkinson couldn't do all this on his own. 24 young women who had been to art schools did a lot of the work. They painted designs onto wooden models, and then they copied the best designs onto paper. Each approved Dazzle design got rushed off to ports all over England, where painters, laborers and artists alike, applied them to the sides of ships that were being unloaded and reloaded. How did Wilkinson know which designs to use? He had a test. One day, the King of the United Kingdom dropped by to have a look. Now, King George V knew a lot about ships because he had joined the Royal Navy when he was just 12 years old. Wilkinson had the king look through a submarine periscope at a painted model on a rotating table. All the king had to do was figure out which direction the model ship was pointed in. It took him a while, more time than a sub-commander would have had, but finally the king had his answer. South by west, decided the king. Actually, Wilkinson replied, the model was pointing east-southeast. King George V had just been told that he was wrong. His Majesty walked